Welcome to Succeed with Shanice, a podcast about keeping it real and helping you thrive in every aspect of your professional journey. I am Shanice, the CEO, sharing my unique perspective as a Black woman in HR and business ownership, and spotlighting conversations where BIPOC experiences in the workplace are shared, valued, and celebrated. Thank you for tuning in today with Succeed with Shanice. We are going to talk a little bit about the recently dropped federal minimum wage change. And yes, it sounds serious, but well, it kind of is. I have been following this trend for a few years now, where the Department of Labor identifies what the minimum wage would be for all employees under certain classifications on a national level, and being able to try and ensure pay equity and affordability. So basically, the Department of Labor announced that the increase in the federal minimum wage is going to happen. There was the first increase on July 1 of 2024, which by the time you are hearing this episode, that has since passed, and we will be preparing for January 1, where it will adjust again in 2025. Again, the federal minimum wage is the lowest hourly rate that employers are legally required to pay their employees. So when I said before that this is serious, it is serious depending on what your current business model is today. But I want to make sure you have the basics so you can start beginning to think about if this is something you need to prepare for January 1. Now, the federal minimum wage hasn't been adjusted since 2009. So personally, my thoughts, done so much research, have been watching the trending conversations around this. So don't take this as law, but just my thoughts that it has been high time that the DOL reassess where the minimum wage sits, especially with everything that has been going on with the economy since the pandemic. So I have been watching and waiting for a time such as this, and I'm here to try and help you navigate all of this information while also seeing how it impacts you as a business leader, owner, or even employee who gets paid. Just to give some background, with this law, an employee is subject to both the state and federal minimum wage laws. So they are basically entitled to either the federal or the state wage minimum, whichever one is highest. And this is important because for a significant period of time during and post the pandemic, many states have already mandated increasing their state minimum wages close to doubling what the federal minimum wage was at that time. And come January 1, your state may already exceed that federal minimum wage. So that's one thing that I think everyone should consider as they're figuring out how to respond to this new ordinance, and make sure that not only are you familiar with this new federal minimum wage, but also your state and local wage rules as well. Now, let me pause here because that was heavy. And I want to share that you're not in this alone. A lot of people, mainly leaders and business owners, are looking at how they can respond to these issues. And they have been for some time now, depending on what state they are in. I have currently resided, and most of my previous experience has been in California. And since 2017, 2018, I myself have worked with organizations to not only track the trends of our federal minimum wage, but our state, city, and county wage laws, because those tend to adjust based on inflation. So for all my California folks out there, we may think we're scotch-free because we're above the new federal minimum wage already and continue to adjust based on inflation. However, I think it's always valuable to be diligent, stay current, stay up to date on how these trends are impacting your workplace or yourself as an employee. So I'm going to take this moment to speak just to my business owners and leaders out there on 3 ways in how they can prepare for the minimum wage changes. And then I'm going to take a few minutes and shift to all my hard workers out there, because this does impact you, and there are ways in which you can ensure it impacts you in a way that's positive but also supportive. So business owners, listen up. There are 3 things I do in my space as a compensation specialist to not only prepare, but also respond to any changes to FLSA regulations. The first is to learn it. Learn your local and state wage laws. Again, and there's levels to this. You have your federal law, which we all now know because it's trending right now. So you can pretty much go on LinkedIn and you'll probably see a post in your feed talking about this, or feel free to go to my page, because trust me, I'm going to keep talking about it. But under that is your state. Every state has, or most states, has their own minimum wage law or ordinance that helps to identify what they deem is appropriate based on what's going on with their inflation in that area. But the third level, and one that's probably overlooked more often than it should, is local ordinances. So I'm talking about the city and county of San Francisco, or Alameda County, or New York City, if I want to go all the way to my friends over there on the East Coast. There are certain cities and counties that have decided, based on their economic status, that they too will determine what the minimum wage would be for employees in that area. First step is always to learn all of the different things from federal, state, to your local wage laws. And if you need to partner with your attorney or legal counsel to be able to gather that, I recommend starting those conversations early. Second, assess your current classifications and wages of your workforce. And that could be as easy as pulling a report to identify who are, under FLSA standards, those employees versus probably those who are independent contractors, and identify whether or not they are impacted by, again, those 3 areas: federal, state, and local wage laws. Are any of them coming under those minimums? And then assess whether or not and how much it would cost to adjust that. In this step, because I'm an HR specialist, I always advise connect with your HR or whoever handles more of your people data or position management information, because they have a more deeper idea of what the current status is, if there are any changes coming down the pipeline. And they're probably already monitoring this and pulling that information for you. So you won't have to create the wheel. Because I know for me, I am always pulling data. So first step, learn those laws. Second step, partner with your HR team to get the information around where your work demographics stand. Third, but important, build that strategy. You have already connected with key partners such as your legal counsel, your HR team, your data analyst. So now you have all the people in place to be able to build a strategy on how to respond to any changes that you may need to do by the January 1, 2025 deadline. Which, by the way, caveat, more likely than not, your state and local laws will also align with the effective date of the change. And it usually falls on the start of the calendar year or the start of the fiscal year. That would be in January or in July, the standard fiscal year. So feel free to begin strategizing now, because by the time that this drops, you have a little bit of time before January to get prepared and figure out the best way and how you can implement those changes if needed, and also including in that strategy on how you can communicate with managers so they understand the change and be ambassadors of that change, and then also with those employees who are going to be impacted by the change. Because honestly, it could be great news. Hey, you're getting a raise. So those are my 3 things that I normally do and highly recommend. Learn your federal, state, and local wage laws. Assess your current classifications and wages amongst your workforce, and then build that strategy and use those key partners like your legal counsel or your HR to implement those changes. And as a bonus, if you feel as though you need additional help just to figure out where to begin with all of this, I'm here, your HR bestie, and I'm happy to come in. So feel free to use the links down in the caption. I'll make sure it's there, and schedule a strategy call with me. I'm happy to even brainstorm and talk out what the best response could be for you and your business. Okay, so now I'm going to shift a little bit because I also want to make sure that I advocate for my employees, you, who are going to be impacted by these changes. And I want to make sure that you feel like you have the knowledge and the understanding, but also feel prepared to receive whatever changes may come your way within your organizations that you're working for. So one thing I would leave with you is be patient, be understanding, and be ready. First, patient. It's going to take some time for your organization to gather all the things, as I listed previously, to make sure they do this right. So you're going to hear, if you're following these trends, especially on social media or in the news, you're going to hear a lot of different things that come out of the federal change versus local changes in your area. It's okay to have that in mind and have those conversations with those individuals that are appropriate within your organization, but also be patient with them, because I'm sure they're listening to this podcast too, and they are doing their best efforts to make all of this be as seamless as possible. This leads me into the second suggestion that I have for all you hardworking folks out there, and that's being understanding. There's a lot of outcomes and ways in which organizations, and most specifically leadership, will respond to these laws. So understand that there isn't necessarily a straight line in how to do that. And Some leaders get it right the first time, while others may slightly miss the mark. Be understanding. It's not the end all be all. Whatever outcomes does roll out at your organization, receive that information and do your own assessment so you're able to then circle back and have that conversation from a knowledgeable and data-driven perspective. And be comfortable to ask those questions, which leads me into my last point of being ready. There's going to be a lot of questions you may have in how they came about with whatever decision or however they respond to these new ordinances. And that is fine. I personally welcome questions from employees when they call me, just wanting to get a general understanding of what does the law mean, how does it impact them, how was it determined, or how was their position assessed to where the actual salary, if adjusted, was being determined. Managers and HR partners and leaders should be prepared for those questions, which is why I welcome all employees to ask them. And I also welcome them to advocate for any change that they feel is right. Because now you too know the laws. You too know what has been determined for all employers to commit to. So by having that information, should the outcome not align with how you understand this ordinance to be, you have the right to advocate for that. The date of January 1 and the actions taking place close, if not on that date, is not the end all be all, and does not have to be the last increase for you within that month or year. So being able to have this information ready and on hand, along with your questions to get more insight, helps you be a better advocate for yourself. So to all my fellow employees out there who are working so hard to do all of the things that they do, be patient, be understanding, but most of all, be ready, because this is about your livelihood too. So now I get off my soapbox, and I believe I am out of time, but I thank you all for tuning in today. This is one conversation that can continue to be had. So if you want to connect, share your thoughts, or maybe frustrations on this new Department of Labor ordinance, feel free to reach out to me. My information is down there in the caption. And if you need any help, I'm here. I continuously share that I am your HR bestie, and that comes with the commitment to help you in what you need. So feel free to check out my service list, book a session with me on my calendar, whatever means you feel is appropriate for you in this time. And I'm happy to help you navigate yet again another adjustment in all things workplace. So I'm signing off, but feel free to subscribe to my next episode, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.